Andrew Tate's appeal for detention was
our favorite boy
rejected by the judge today. Let's talk a little bit about this case. Now, Mr. Tate added Tina Glandian to his legal team. I told you this was going to happen. I said he's not happy with his current situation, so he's going to try to do whatever he can to get like a rat in a cage because he's panicky, and you got to get out of there, right? Now, let's just talk about this a little bit. Now, Andrew Tate has not been charged with a crime yet. He's on preventative detention, basically, because they thought he was going to run. And we don't have that here in the United States. So you get brought into court, or you get arrested. Within 36 hours, they have to bring you in front of a judge. Okay, in some states it's 48, but mostly they have to bring you in before a judge within 36 to 48 hours. Once they bring you in, the judge has to do one of two things. You have to be charged with a crime and then offered conditions of release. Unless it's federal, and there are certain kinds of federal crimes, and certain states favor detention on certain crimes. But you're at least charged, so you can start defending yourself. So
as we know, Andrew Tate hasn't really been charged with anything. They're still like gathering evidence for, what is it? Did they have him in there for like up to 3 months, but they can do up to 6 or something like that? And so they're like gathering evidence right now as to what they're going to charge him with, which does kind of seem weird, right? Like if you're, well, I was going to say if you're arresting somebody, wouldn't you kind of already have evidence? But then we don't do that because we literally arrest people all the time that don't, like, we don't have evidence. We just have suspicion. We're like, oh, we suspect you. And then they do some type of investigation to find them. But yeah, there's that 48-hour rule, like he's saying. Yeah, it's less interesting because, yeah, he could be up there for like 6 months. They could just like drag it out. He's just in prison for like 6 months. Just like, yeah, we'll just let him dry out, boys. Let him dry out. He was living the high life before. Yeah, it's weird. It's interesting how like different countries do things differently.
As you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Mr. Tate, but you know what I'm not a big fan of? I'm not a big fan of preventative detention. So they extended it another 30 days, so that's 60 days he's being held in jail
so 2 months.
Without bail and without even being charged with a crime. I think that's wrong. I absolutely think.
Is this like a leftover from the Soviet Union because Romania used to be part of the Soviet Union? Like, is this some sort of leftover stuff like that? Like, I wonder. Like, I'm curious. I'd be curious to know, like, Ukraine's in a war zone right now, but what it was like there and the Czech Republic and stuff. Like, if they have something similar. Because that's kind of crazy, because literally if somebody was just like, they just wanted to put you in prison to be like, oh, we just want to make you suffer and be douchebags, they could do that and then, like, not charge you with anything. Or charge you with some like crap, I don't know, something really light. And they're like, well, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something small. Like you stole less than $5,000 or something. I don't know. I don't know what something small would be. I'm just trying to think of something here. But yeah, it could be used in a bad way. This is interesting. This is interesting.
I think that's wrong. So he's brought this Tina Glandian, who's an international human rights lawyer, I guess. She rose to fame with Mike Tyson and Chris Brown, a couple others.
What? Wait. So he has an American lawyer representing him in Romania or working with the team in Romania? Is that smart? I don't know. Like, wouldn't you want somebody who's like really good inside the country, like that you're being charged in? Okay, well, he must have some kind of reason for doing that.
So they have appealed the last detention order from the judge, and it was just denied today. So where are we at?
That's not surprising.
So let's just kind of recap what's happened to Mr. Tate. So the two of them, the two Tate brothers and the two ladies, were arrested in their Bucharest home on December 29th. So that gives you kind of a time frame about where he's at. So the next day, the court made a ruling on December 30th that they are in detention. So
It's
they
got like another
appealed by
25
January
days or so.
10th, that first order of detention. Well, then on January 15th, they took all of his luxury cars. Then the judge extends their detention on January 20th, and then today the judge denied the appeal. One of the rationales the judge gave for denying the appeal was a systematic psychological control and threats of constant physical abuse of these ladies. The judge isn't just making that up. The judge is using the information he gets from the prosecutor to make that determination. He should be charged by now. He should have been offered some bail, and if he wasn't offered bail, if they were decided to detain him, like they can do in the federal system for sure, then you still have the right to have a detention hearing and to try to overcome that presumptive detention. But he's not been offered that. So, despite whatever I like or dislike, I don't like the way he's being treated. I don't like the fact that his natural human rights, the rights that we take for granted in this country.
That's a great point. The rights that we take for granted, like in North America. Like you go to other places, like they just lock you up and like throw away the key almost in a sense, right? Which is kind of like what's happening here. Maybe not to that degree, but I know for Canada, we had a bunch of people get locked up in China when there was a whole Huawei thing where we weren't accepting Huawei into our country. And they literally like locked up like 3 or 4 prominent Canadian businessmen in China. I'm actually not even sure. That's a good question. I'm not even sure if we got them released and back. It was ridiculous. And then we locked up one of their people. Like it was from Huawei, like a Huawei executive or something. It was just whack. Oh man.
Because you have a right to bail, you have a right to have speedy proceedings, you have the right to be brought in front of a judge and face your accuser. You have all these different rights, and it doesn't seem like he's getting those rights observed. And that's one of the reasons that he brought this Tina in. This Tina Glandian, she represented Mike Tyson.
Well, sorry, this is why I guess the other snippet where I posted, I don't know, like a few days ago, where he was walking into the courtroom and people were asking him, I can't remember what they asked him, but he responded like there's no justice in Romania, it seems.
Wrong. They know we've done nothing wrong. The
Andrew,
case file is completely
is the
empty.
matrix making you?
Andrew, what happened in prison?
The case file is completely empty. Of course it's unjust. There's no justice in Romania, unfortunately.
Did you hurt any girl?
Of course not.
Now I'm wondering if he's referring to this, what's being talked about here specifically, is that like they're just denying him the rights that he thinks he should be having. I don't know if they have these rights in Romania or if they observe them, but like he's not getting the same treatment, at least that we would expect, and maybe he expects. So I wonder if that's essentially what he's referring to. And now I'm thinking about it, that probably makes sense. That's probably what he was referring to.
And Chris Brown, and she specializes in international human rights. So it probably is a good idea to bring her in, but it didn't help. She alleged that outside pressures had an impact of the case, but she didn't say what those outside pressures were, and she indicated that the system has failed. She uses those kind of grandiose, but I think she's right, though, in all honesty. So Tina Glandian is...
Well, I don't think anyone would be surprised if outside pressures were affecting this, because even when you look at like the George Floyd trial of the police officer, whatever his name was, I forget what his name was now. But it was like everybody was like protesting and like burning shit down, and like it was all this craziness that was going on, and they had to I'm missing the details, but I just remember like the judge I think mentioned a few times about people from the outside influencing folks that were obviously inside the courts, and I think they had to take even more precautions with the jury. And then when the trial finished, I'm pretty sure like some of the jury members like got like stalked and harassed and stuff. Yeah, I don't think anybody's surprised if we think that there's outside forces. Like people have so many people have opinions on Andrew Tate on like what should happen to him, whether you agree with them or not, right? Like I think there's a lot of effect, and it's one guy, it's one judge who has to deal with it, and he also has to. He's also a government employee, and perhaps the government there doesn't like the fact that Andrew Tate, in one hand, brings a spotlight to Romania, but then brings a spotlight in sort of like a negative way too, right? Like it's not necessarily positive. So I don't know. I don't know. This is way above my pay grade.
Bringing a different approach, and she's talking about more on the grand scale of where Romania is in the grand scheme of things. So, like I said, in the United States and other countries, you're afforded certain rights, and we take those rights for granted. And those rights but they're the bedrock of our criminal justice system, and they're the bedrock of England's criminal justice system and some of the other modern Western nations. So what she's doing, she's talking about the outside pressures, but she's also talking about how Romania is part of the EU and they're trying to get into the fold, but they're not really having the same criminal rights that a defendant is supposed to have, or they're not observing the rights that a criminal defendant is supposed to have.
That's a good point. Isn't that kind of like what just Ukraine was trying to do? Like, well, they were trying to get into NATO, but like, kind of similar, right? Like, and it's like, well, you have to meet a certain standard, to get into these groups. So, I don't know. Maybe he's bringing a bad name to them just on the EU front. And maybe their laws are behind, and that's why, like, if you think about the EU, people don't generally think about Romania, and they're like, yeah, Romania, like this happening place, whatever. Like, a lot of people say this, but like before Andrew Tate came along, no one was really talking about Romania. Like, how many people you hear talk about Romania? No, they're not.
One of the things that the judge used, he said, the capacity of the defendants to exercise permanent psychological control over the victims, including by resorting to constant acts of violence. So the judge has ordered that the detention is extended to February 27th. So that's almost 60 days. Almost 60 days without being charged. I just, I suppose the argument is that if he's out, he can destroy evidence, he can manipulate witnesses, that kind of thing. But we don't do it like that. We don't have, it's not vanilla sky. I mean, we don't do this preventative detention stuff. We just don't do it like that. When you look at the complexity of what they're dealing with, it is a big case. I mean, no matter how you slice it, you've got all kinds of different aspects to it. You've got sex trafficking, you've got sexual assault type allegations, probably some tax evasion type stuff, money laundering, and then you got his own statements where he says he's in with kind of the mafia of Romania. So we don't know exactly what they know, but we do know that the judge has it in his head that there's a systematic control of these women, and it's focused on violence to control them. So with that said, let's look to the February 27th date and see what happens then. The Romanian authorities have said that they can ask for up to 180 days.
Yeah, that's 6 months.
I can't imagine being held for 6 months without charges. So for those of you who are Andrew Tate fans, and I know there are a lot of you out there, I agree with you that this is an outrage that he has not been charged yet and that he has not been afforded any kind of bail argument. And the judge has reviewed his detention, but hasn't really offered him any kind of relief. And not that, and so those are the rights that we are used to. Those are the rights that we have taken for granted. Those are the bedrock principles of our criminal justice system. You're guilty only after proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in front of a jury. Otherwise, you're presumed innocent. And I don't think he's getting that presumption. So, this has just been my quick reaction to the recent news that Andrew Tate is being held. He's being held until February 27th. They extended it another month. And he's been denied his appeal.
Well, that was the first
So we'll
extension.
keep following it. And
That was the first extension, right? Up to the 27th. So it's not like they extended it another time. No, they extended it back like, what, 15 days ago or something to this, to the 27th of February. And then they denied his appeal on it. So, okay. His video is basically over. So, like, I'll just say, like, I think if people watch my videos, I have been critical of Andrew Tate, and I have also been not critical of him in certain areas. I think he's entertaining and he's funny, and I think he grabs your attention, but I don't like everything he says, and I think he can be a bit of an asshole in certain ways and certain things that he says, and other ways, I listen to him and I go like, that makes a lot of sense. Like what he's saying, certain things. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. I was like, I agree with it. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Like, I'm not in favor of being on either side. Either he's guilty or he's not guilty. That's not me. I'm like, look, let's just let the process play out. Yeah, it sucks. He's stuck in prison for this long. I wouldn't want to be in prison this long. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm sure it sucks. Hopefully, like, he's not getting attacked and stuff, and he's just kind of like living the cell life, and it's pretty uneventful. But even then, it sucks. But you gotta play it out, and this is Romanian law, I guess. Even though it's wacky, like, oh my god, don't. It almost reminds me of like Singapore. Like Singapore, if you chew gum, and you like stick it somewhere, they fine you like 500. Oh, I forget what their currency is. I can't remember. I don't know if it's Singaporean dollars. But anyways, they fine you money. It's like so strict over there. So you're just like, and you get it like a caning. You can get caned and stuff for certain crimes. So I've been over there a few times. I always thought it was crazy. But the country runs super well and is super advanced and stuff. All right, please like and subscribe, and hopefully we can all sort of agree that how this is going down is not great. Like, we wouldn't want to be in this position, but we can all still disagree on whether we think he's guilty or not. That's totally fine.